Jide Ogunsowo, our in-house data and information analyst, and joins us now. Jide, you've been looking at this political space and seeing how the defections have happened to this time, the latest being Honorable Agbonaima. What have you found as the reason for this?
I think it's a power game. It's a power game, but we need to also look at exactly what else is going on in the Senate. And that is that there's been a lot of inconsistencies in the number of senators and how power has consistently changed. And I'll give you an instance. Today we have 107 senators. We still have outstanding in Kogi and in Anambra. But out of these 107 senators, how many of them have been consistently been in the Senate in the last three dispensations? So I'm looking at 2007, 2011, and 2015. Only 13. And so what does this mean? It means that there isn't consistency in anything that does go on. We've got only 13 out of 109 senators that we should have that have been consistently in the House. The challenge is, out of these 13 senators, majority are PDP. So the summary of exactly what is going on in the Senate and indeed the National Assembly is that it's a war between the majority, which is the APC, and a war between those that have the experience, the PDP.
Just needed to get your views on that just before we launch into the main focus for now, which has to do with fighting the war against terror, just like the PDP and APC in this war. And this $1 billion in particular, looking at that question of the release being okayed by the governors, if the ECA will go ahead to release this, is yet to be seen. But how important would we have to consider that that $1 billion is targeted towards the fight against insurgency, especially the Northeast with Boko Haram, and then looking at issues of kidnapping? You do remember that the Vice President said that it's not only for the Northeast to fight Boko Haram, but other vices of crime across the country.
There are several ways we could look at this. But let's consider 3 myths, and then we could look at potential solutions. 3 myths regarding the same question. Now, the first myth is guns kill terrorists, and so purchasing more guns will allow us to kill all the terrorists. But is that the fact? Now let's explore that a bit more. And we need to look at our very first budget in this Fourth Republic. 2000, when President Obasanjo read his own first budget. Total budget for all the ministries, only 470 billion naira. Now in 2000, 470 billion naira was a lot of money. But now compare that with today's budget for only defense. 567 billion naira in total. And so today's budget for defense only is more than all the budgets of 2000. But again, is that a very fair way of looking at it, considering inflation? Perhaps not. And so what has really happened is that even though inflation has happened within all those years, affecting the ability for you and I to easily be able to buy food at the same price, for the government, inflation is also influencing equipment financing. And so the most fair way to look at this is to look at the dollar equivalent. And what you realize is, since the dollar is more stable than the naira, then wherever there's dollar, the governors will mouth and thirst for those dollars. And that's exactly what is going on regarding these funds in the excess crude. It's because the naira no longer is sufficient to finance our thirst for consumption or even to finance equipment. Where the power is the dollar. So let's look at exactly what the government has done in the last 3 years. 2016, the capital expenditure budget for Ministry of Defense only was 130 billion naira. The reason why that was remarkable was, prior to 2016, we had never budgeted for capital expenditure for the Ministry of Defense in 3 digits. So we had seen 60 billion, 70 billion, but this was the first time that the budget for the Ministry of Defense for capital will exceed 100 billion. 2016, the government had budgeted 130 billion naira. And in 2017, this year, the budget moved to 139 billion naira. And so in 2 years, the government has budgeted close to 300 billion naira for the Ministry of Defense for capital expenditure. And so we need to ask ourselves that if the government has budgeted for the Ministry of Defense a capital of 300 billion naira in just 2 years, what is the budget of defense for Boko Haram? That is where our focus should be.
Do you think the government is able to come up with the figures and how much it will cost, say, for the capital expenditure to fight Boko Haram, if they have that, to kill one insurgent?
More than kill one insurgent, we need to look at how are the insurgents raising their own finance. Guns kill terrorists, and so by buying more guns, we'll kill all the terrorists. And so we've budgeted 300 billion in the last 2 years for the Ministry of Defense capital expenditure alone, and the terrorists are still not yet dead. So there are 3 questions we need to ask ourselves. Does Boko Haram have their own Ministry of Defense, and what are they budgeting? The second question is to find out that if the budget of Boko Haram is below 300 billion naira, does that mean they are wiser than our soldiers? And indeed, if the budget of Boko Haram, after more than a decade, they are still not all yet dead, if their budget is beyond that of ours, can we still call them insurgents? And is really this a war between Nigeria and insurgents, or between a nation and another nation? So we need to look carefully at our strategy. And speaking of strategies, I particularly like the story of David and Goliath in the Bible, 1 Samuel. Again, it's also in the Quran, Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 250. And why is that story so peculiar to us? And that's because in that same story, we saw David, who people thought would take on a lot of equipment, a lot of ammunition to fight Goliath. Again, because the thinking was that David will require more guns to kill this Goliath. But then we saw that it wasn't about how much equipment David had. It was about first having the right strategy. And rather than take on more guns and swords or even a body armor, he took away all of that and used the strategy of distance to use a sling on Goliath, who had all the weapons. And so the first myth really does tell us that getting more guns will not kill Boko Haram. It could help, but we need to first of all come up with the right strategy, think out of the box, and move from holding the bull by the horn to going into the mouth of the bull and taking the bull by the teeth.
Jide, that will be a good place to end it. Unfortunately, we cannot get to the second and the third myth, but I hope that at some point we'll be able to do that in the course of the program, hopefully next week. That's how the program has been. Jide Ogunsowo is our data and information analyst. But that's how the program has been today. It's Friday. Just stay safe. I am Gimba Umar.
I'm Nel Taigwe. Do try and have a good weekend.
I'm Ajuri Ngelale. Have safe holiday travels.